to The Edge, and we have an unusual guest tonight, one who's been with us in the past, a very rich and rewarding experience to have, Faith Fippinger.
Thank you, Augie.
Faith, some people have called, I'm going to embarrass you now, some people call you the Saint of Sarasota. Oh. But there's a couple of people, you know. I've been called some things, but never the saint of anything. So you know, that's the fate of someone who's done some extraordinary things. And in our first show, it was a three-way show. We had Sally Shelley, who no longer is with us. She died a year later.
Yeah,
she was in a car wreck and went into a coma. It was a terrible ending for her. But in that show, we talked about your experiences in Iraq early on. And one of the things that came up in the show, you were there during the bombing in this. Was it the second war or the first war of Iraq?
No, it was the 2003 illegal invasion.
The illegal invasion. Mm-hmm. And you were in the hospital in Iraq? In Baghdad, or what city?
After the bombing started, I went to the hospital to volunteer, a civilian hospital to volunteer. It was in Baghdad.
It was in Baghdad. Why don't you tell the story again, somewhat like you told before, of a couple of your experiences?
Well, it was a 24-hour steady stream of innocent civilians in all stages of life and death coming in. And I remember when I first went to offer my whatever I could do, the first impression was that it was just absolute blood everywhere, on the walls,
why would blood be everywhere?
Because of the bombing and the people being, as I said, in every stage of life and death. Missing arms, missing legs, head wounds, chest wounds, never ending 24 hours a day, and there was just no time to clean up the blood. Not that there was really anything to clean it with, but...
So the facilities were, was there electric power, was there water, was there...
Of sorts.
Of sorts.
I mean, we had 13 years of sanctions, which totally devastated the country, the people, the hospitals, all facilities to start with. And then the bombing besides. It was pretty dire. The
story that I still remember, the walls were blood-soaked in many cases because, as you say, the control of the wounds was next to nothing. They couldn't bring things under control, and the wounds were so horrific that human blood was exposed because of the wounds. But you told about the woman who was injured severely and had a new infant and needed to nurse that infant, and that was a pretty graphic experience. And I think the purpose that I got, and I think at that time in our interview that came home to me and to others, was that this is the effects of war. These are the disasters of war, the real disasters of war, collateral damage, as some people refer to it. Because America has been sanitized from the effects of the war. So what was her condition?
Well, she was a beautiful young Iraqi woman, pregnant, and a missile hit their home far away from any military installation, and she lost one arm and was severely injured in the process of being at the hospital and the advancement of the injuries. She lost her second arm, and...
How did that happen?
Well, one was blown off to start with, and the other one had to be amputated.
Oh, so they had to remove it.
Right, yes, because the damage was so severe.
You said she was pregnant.
She did have her baby. Fortunately, it was near full term. The baby appeared to be all right, but I can still I can still feel it, see it, when I would go to her room or past her room, you know, her crying, I can't hold my baby, I can't hold my baby. And she was only one of, you know, hundreds and hundreds a day that would come in. I remember one young man, both legs, and his wife standing next to him, and she said to me, "So this is liberation." And you know, it just went on and on. The tragedy, as I've said before, is that this has all been said before. It's all been experienced before. It's all been written about before. And
well,
we're still here.
Well, you know, there's a quote from Joe Stalin, and it was that 1 million deaths are just a statistic, but one death can be a true tragedy because you're brought close to it. And that's kind of why I've asked you to remind us about that experience of this woman who's not dead, but who's going through this hell of a situation with a newborn, and in extraordinary, impossible circumstances. I always think of the humorous moment of the woman who comes out of the fictional situation of a nuclear explosion hits a large city in America, and the woman comes down on the street and she's got her hair curlers up, and she said, "Where is As the World Turns, my television show?" The out-of-touch aspect of America.
It's interesting that you say that, because a number of times I've been to the wonderful farmers market here in Sarasota, sometimes passing out flyers for Code Pink, but sometimes just looking at all the wonderful things they have there, and seeing the people with their lovely dogs and their baskets full of flowers and things. I often wonder, does anyone ever think of the fact that a car bomb could be going off, or the U.S. could be dropping missiles right now, right here in the market, like it happens in so many other places around the world.
Well, I traveled a bit, and I've been in France when there's been threats, and they shut down the subway and chase people out of certain areas. And Europe has gone through this, England as well. Not so much Germany for some reason, but the French seem to get hit with the threats more so. But they deal with it, and they use it as a criminal activity. They don't go to war over it. They don't retaliate to solve their criminal activities within their country that way, which we have done. But now time has passed. The war has been a big issue, and now the economy is swamped it, and the foreclosures and so forth has made people realize the outcome of policies that are financially reckless and rampant.
Right, but people also have to connect the expense of the war with our financial situation as well. When we're spending $720 million plus a day in Iraq on war for a start.
That translates to over $200 billion a year.
Right. We could do a lot with that.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, if each state got a piece of that money to rebuild whatever they needed to rebuild and put people to work that way, it might be an interesting experience for America to do those positive things. I think people are coming to that kind of conclusion. But then I'm hopeful. So what was the outcome of the woman? How did you helped her at the time? What was her resolution? You had to leave, and
I had to leave, and I feel very, very badly that for the most part I don't know what's happened to
her wounds
the majority of the people. Yes.
Yeah, she was sort of taken care of, and someone.
Well, she was in the hospital until who knows.
You've been a part of the peace vigil down on the bayfront in Sarasota for quite a while.
6 years. This is the 6th year of the war in Iraq.
And the peace vigil was initially a silent vigil. It was started by Dave Bechtel, who was a member of the Southwest Coalition for Peace and Justice, which is one of the sponsors of this television show. We've gotten over the last 3 years or so a number of sponsors. And of course, this last year we've had a lot of politicians on, and I still try to do a good show, even though there's politicians on with me.
Well, we need to hear from them, Augie, so thank you.
Well, you know, it's been an interesting year for me. But seeing you leave this community as a true loss to the community, I have to tell you.
Well, you're
personally,
kind to say that, Augie. I appreciate it.
I look to you as someone truly indicative of what the peace movement should and is about. I just have to tell you that. And if it embarrasses you, tough luck.
Well, I thank you for that, but I have to say that the people that I have met here in the 10 years that I've been in Sarasota, in the peace movement and otherwise, I'll be taking all of them with me because they are the ones who give me hope. Hope that we will have a more peaceful, a greener, a more compassionate world one day. And so it's kind of their message that they've helped me to understand and form that I hope to also be taking with me and spreading when I'm there.
I traveled this summer up to Illinois, which is the state where I come from. And,
me too.
Yeah, well, you are from Illinois.
That's right.
Where are you from?
We're a suburb of Chicago, western suburb.
Which?
Bellwood.
Bellwood.
Elmhurst.
Elmhurst, sure. I know that area. Well, but I traveled into central Illinois, and north of Peoria, which is a large city in the center, is an area north of there, apple orchards and so forth, about 20, 30 miles up north. As far as the eye could see, there were windmills, huge windmills. The farmers were able to do their stuff, and I thought, wow, I was impressed. I mean, these things walk themselves across the landscape. There were so many. They seemed to, the blades would go slowly, and just like walking men in the distance. And they're 400 feet high. They're massive, but there were no carcasses of birds at their bottom and so forth. The same thing was true east of Peoria, down by Bloomington, Illinois. You know, Illinois State University is down there, and Peoria is the home of Caterpillar Tractor Company. But these windmills were everywhere, and I was really heartened to see that.
Yes.
No ethanol plants that I witnessed, but it looks as though people have really gotten hold of this thing. T. Boone Pickens, for all his past deeds of oil and so forth, seems to have hit on something in the last years of his life to really contribute back in a positive way, something that may give us some hope, which is, I think, what we're looking for.
And hopefully one day in the Sunshine State we'll see many, many solar panels.
Well, I guess there are some in the state, in Sarasota. They have a big area FPL has with the solar. But if that becomes our dedication as a people, a more constructive contribution to ourselves and to the world, I think we can maybe look to a future a little less violent.
Yes, it is hopeful. It is very hopeful, but we have a long way to go.
Oh, well, the road has to begin somewhere.
That's right.
What are your best memories for here?
Of Sarasota?
And maybe your worst.
Oh, I think the best memories always come back to people that you meet and the times, good times and maybe even sad times that you have with some of the people and the friends that you make. And of course the beautiful beaches and the sunshine and all of that in Sarasota helps, and the theater and all of that. But absolutely it's just being with friends have been the best times. And family. I do have family here.
And your brother, you live with your brother now.
Well, now that I sold the house, until I leave, I've been staying with them, and they've been very kind to me.
He doesn't lock you out at night.
Their little dog, I think, sometimes says, "Oh, here she comes again." Our funeral.